All right, man. Here we go. You ready?
I am ready, Pat. Born ready. Feeling good.
All right. Well, we've got a question from the community. We might have two questions just to key the audience in. It just depends upon how tight and tidy we are with the first topic, and if we leave ourselves room, great. If not, it'll be a second show later on.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we can get a bit long-winded. So for everybody out there looking to support the show, we appreciate you. And of course, if you own a gym, doesn't matter what kind of gym it is, any sort of gym in the world, you got to take care of all the non-sexy stuff, right? The billing, the gym management, workout tracking, and all that stuff. BTWB's got you covered with an all-in-one solution. Go to btwb.com if you do own a gym and check that out. And then on the other side, we've got all kinds of varied, not random programs and cycles that might help you on your fitness journey. So go to variednotrandom.com. There's cycles to get your first pull-up, push-up, handstand push-up, barbell work, running programs, some on-ramps for bodyweight, dumbbell, barbell, you name it. So check those out. They help keep the lights on. So with that, let's get right in. So the first question is about coaches at gyms. And this is from William B, it sounds like. Pat and Boz, I think, am I reading the right question? Yes, I am, okay. Pat and Boz, I found CrossFit during the pandemic with my first workout being Murph. Nope, I'm reading the wrong question. Darn it.
Oh
Sorry,
my
everybody.
goodness, Pat.
Sorry, everybody. Sorry, everybody.
I can't even believe it. What a disaster.
I've got these questions saved in my phone as photos, and that was, one that's not for today, so my apologies. Okay, this is from Robert. Here we go. Possible topic. Should gyms with multiple coaches be coaching at different times and classes or stay to a more set schedule? At our gym, we have 6 part-time coaches with vastly different backgrounds and experiences. Should the owners be scheduling coaches to teach different classes so that clients can perhaps learn new ways of doing skills, or is it better for them to have a set coach? I've been to the Power Monkey camp several times. Thanks for the recommendation, Boz. And I have vastly different knowledge than some of our early morning coaches, but yet I've never coached some of the early morning athletes. Cool question.
Yeah, great question. And I love these kind of like nitty-gritty affiliate questions because they're the type of things that come out once you get in the mix. It's not something that's easy to anticipate a lot of times because, you're just kind of working away. And a lot of times some of these things tend to develop organically within the walls of the affiliate. It's not something that was necessarily premeditated. Just over time, that's how it happens to be. Mm-hmm. And so number one, I think it's always good to kind of step back and just take an objective look at what's actually happening and whether or not that is fitting the needs of both the staff and the athletes and the clients there. Because I bet you that's what happened in this scenario. I bet it would be unlikely that if you were to poll 100 affiliates, that they would say explicitly, oh yeah, we try to keep classes only taught by certain coaches at certain time. I bet you in the majority of the time, and I could be wrong, it's not something that was explicitly planned. It's just kind of what happened due to the natural scheduling tendencies that most people have.
Right.
And I mean, hey, the reality that most of us have a schedule that does kind of keep us within fixed parameters. You have to respect that too.
That's where my mind went as well.
Yeah. But that being said, I think it's a great example of a question that, hey, if you step back and you start kind of peeling the onion a little bit, I think you can find some things there that are worth bringing up. So I like this question a lot because at face value, I'm like, man, my answer is pretty simple. I'm like, hey, if you don't have restraints of schedule and people can make it in at different times, the answer is, of course, try to cross-pollinate. You know what I mean? But I think the meat goes a little deeper to the bone on this one.
Yeah, whatever it's called, steel man or straw man, kind of either side of it, right? First of all, like you're saying, I think most people, even like they said in the question, they're part-time coaches. So that tells me they are doing something else with their lives as well that probably is more fixed and rigid, and therefore they can't switch the time that they coach because they've got this other occupation, or they're taking their kids to school, whatever it happens to be. And so I can coach the 6 p.m. class, or I can coach nothing. Okay, you got the 6 p.m. class, and that's how it works. And hey, it'd be great if we exposed you to the 3 p.m. class. Sorry, that's just literally impossible. And so they'll never see me. And so that I think could happen it is probably more of the norm and what's driving what what dictates the schedule as well. But like you said, if I step back and it's like, okay, all things being equal, what is probably the best for everyone's advancement and development? It's probably some diversity and variance amongst different coaches, different training styles, different specialties, just like this individual said when they wrote the question. I think that's probably going to yield the best results. Now I've just echoed everything that you've said up to this point. So I'll take the other side just for a second, which is then you just might have some people where if you've always got that same coach or trainer, your ability to really connect with that person and develop a great relationship, and they know about your family and what's going on because you just get this repeated exposure, not once every 4 days, but like 5 times a week. We chat and we shoot the breeze a bit before and after the class, and they know me. Or I chose this class because I tried the so-and-so class, and hey, that person was nice, but we just didn't vibe. It just wasn't there. And I went to the 7 p.m. class, and I don't know why, I just clicked with the trainer, and then they switch people around, and even though that other coach knows a lot more about gymnastics, you're like, well, kind of bummed out that so-and-so wasn't here. Like, because you've got some people in this world that are like, myself and Larry David. They're a bit of a curmudgeon. They just, I like who I like, and I don't like who I don't like. Hey, you're an Olympic lifting specialist. That's great. I'd rather work out with so-and-so because, they're my boy. So you've got all different types to kind of intermingle there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take the other end of that, though, which is that sometimes you don't know who your boy is until you get in front of him.
Without a doubt.
So I've seen that happen, too, in affiliates where, okay, let's say I'm a regular 7 a.m., gym goer, and I come into Pat's class, and I think Pat is my guy, and I don't break out of Pat's class, but, Pat can't make it one morning, and Joe subs in. I've never taken a class from Joe, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, I love this guy. He's great. He fixed my squat right away. He's the man. What time does Joe teach? And then boom, maybe that gives an opportunity to the athlete to take a look at their schedule and maybe pick and choose some different classes from time to time, and off you go. So I think that goes both ways too. But I'll tell you what it boils down to, in my opinion, and this is really getting to the heart. I said that the meat goes a little deeper than I think what it originally might seem during this question. I think this one, surprise, surprise, comes down to the culture of the gym.
Had a feeling.
Yeah, and what I mean by that specifically is that the culture of this gym, if you're going to have a ton of cross-pollination and it's going to be successful, is that it needs to be avoidant of the, quote, right way mentality. And what I mean by that is sometimes you get people that get really, really fixated on one way to approach a movement, and it becomes the right way. And now when you have a well-meaning, maybe really well-experienced, great coach come in with a slightly different approach, in this person's mind, it creates this conflict because it's like, well, wait a minute. I have been exposed to this one right way, and now you're asking me to do something different. How do I deal with this? And that, to me, comes from the top. That seems to be, in my experience, very much a leadership thing. And if the culture of the gym is like, this is how we do it, this is the only way to do it, there's no other way to approach it than this, man, you're going to set yourself up for some awkward conversations down the road. But on the other hand, if you have a gym culture that's set up that's like, look, the goal is good movement, under intensity, constant progression, and all of these kind of, great kind of growth mindset ideas that spawn off of that, then there's no conflict. I can have Pat come in and show me a different approach to do the clean and jerk, and I don't have to worry about like, oh my goodness, it's not the right way. That's a really cool experience because now I can figure out what does actually click for me as a person and what approach does feel like it's easier for me to get closer to that ideal with. So I guess what I'm trying to say at the root of it is that, hey, that's more important than whether or not the staff themselves have a fixed or rotating schedule, is this concept behind how are you introducing people to the learning process. That is so critical in my opinion. And if you can get that squared away, who is filling that coaching slot? It's not that it's inconsequential. Obviously, those people are a big deal, but it's going to get you a lot further down that track with a lot less resistance than the alternative. So that's my soapbox for this particular episode, is like, hey, get that culture right, get people understanding that, like, look, there's lots of ways to the top of the mountain, be receptive to that, and man, you're going to see a lot of cool things that kind of come out of that.
That's a fine point and quite accurate, and it really does come down a lot to the culture because, without a doubt, if the clientele was open to it and the coaching staff was capable and they all had their different needs, everyone's going to excel by, as you said, before we clicked on the camera, a little bit of like cross-pollination, being exposed to, oh, you hear a new cue from a new coach that has a different tool bag than somebody else, and suddenly something clicks even though it didn't, like, that's fantastic,
Yeah.
The culture thing, it's funny because it's so simple, but it is
slippery though.
It is so challenging too because a lot of it depends. It has to be that the owners group, and the coaches, they're on the same sheet of music. They know their values, their ideals, their whatever it is, and they've articulated them well and clearly to the staff. And then the staff, because you could understand what the coach says, great. It's like when you join a company, is what we do, great. But then in the coffee room, you're talking junk, like it happens, all the time. So you have to have like mature coaches as well that don't just, because even like a slight eye roll can undermine the coach from another class, right? It's like you come into this new class and your particular specialty is more on the Olympic lifting side, for example.
Yeah.
And you've got cleans happening that day and you're working with so-and-so that you normally don't work with. And you're explaining to them how something happens and they go, oh, well, Coach so-and-so said that I should do this. And all you need, if you just hear this, all right, well, here, like that you just immediately undermined that coach.
You threw him under the bus. Yeah, there's no two ways about it.
You didn't say a word, but if all like you just had this deflated posture, this eye roll, like, okay, look, well, here's what you should do on the second pull, like implying that is, I don't know why you said that. All of a sudden, that's a simple thing, but all those things have to be articulated, and then the coaching staff has to have the maturity to understand, like you said, so-and-so might teach movement A, B, or C wildly different than you do. But is it safe? Is it effective? Is the athlete learning? Are they moving in a good direction? Did they get to the finish line but just on a different route? Cool. Like that's good. And that, if you go to a gym that's running like that, everyone's on the same sheet of music, everyone's allowed to be who they are and bring their background to the table, but in a way that, creates this just tapestry of all these different schools of thought that benefit the athlete. That's cool. I mean, that's something that I would want to be a part of as well.
Well, and at the risk of being a little less objective, like you can feel it, like when you're in that environment, you're like, oh, this is somewhere that I want to remain. Like you can feel that. And I believe that you can also feel the inverse when there's maybe a lack of trust from the affiliate owner or the manager and some of the lower tier coaches. And, there's they're kind of coming over the top on these coaching styles, or like you said, there's some of this kind of backhanded negativity around
Bosman. You know how Bosman's class moves.
Yeah, exactly. I believe you can also feel that, and that starts to become an environment that people become wary of, whether they can articulate that or not, whether or not they're that conscious of it. At a certain point, there's going to be some of that negativity that just kind of seeps its way through, and you'll find that people tend to elect out of that after a certain amount of time. They're like, there's something weird about this environment. I just don't like to be here anymore. And then they'll figure out something else to do. So it's,
You know what I think is also a great testament to having a great culture, great leadership, solid ideals or values of that particular gym, and then, like a mature coaching staff that exemplifies those, is you can't be an amazing coach at everything. Like you're going to have some things that you're better at than others or whatnot. And if you are a generalist, as we are in CrossFit, you've got to know how to make somebody's running better, their calisthenics better, their powerlifting better, their Olympic lifting better. Like there's so many different things to know how to do on top of general nutrition advice and all of these sorts of things. Now, that's a powerful skill set, right? But then if you've got somebody like, Chad Vaughn walks into your gym who's done nothing but Olympic lift for his entire existence on this planet, there's a good chance that he's better in that realm than you are. And so it's cool to see a coach that maybe is working with an athlete and they're just, they're like, hey, there's something going on with your snatch. I wish I could tell you what it is. It's bothering me. You're missing some lifts and I can't pinpoint it. I'm going to reach out to so-and-so in the other class, the other coach, because man, I'll tell you what, this is just his wheelhouse. That shows a really cool level of like confidence in what you do, support of the entire community, think good things are going on with that gym, and ideally the athlete would recognize that as well. That's a cool thing to see.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's such a cool thing too, because then that coach has the opportunity to grow from that. They go and find out this person who's the de facto expert, even if it just means they're a little bit ahead of where that coach is. It's like, hey, you got more expertise than me. Now they can take that back and try to integrate that approach into their own coaching style, and they grow from that too. And so that kind of leads me into my next point, which is that I am very pro this kind of coaching pollination for the fact that it makes it harder to hide as a coach. I think that if you are, and again, like, hey, this is all under the assumption that there's not hard schedule restrictions. I get it. Life might not allow it. That let's just pretend that, we have the choice. But, I do think that it's easy to fall into a rut in the long-term coaching game where you become a little bit complacent. I think we've all done it from time to time. I know I certainly have. Where it's like, okay, hey, I got my, 6 and 7 a.m. group. I know these guys. It's the same people. It's a relatively static group. They're awesome. I love them. They love me. But there's just certain things that we all know we kind of just don't do. You know what I mean? It's like there's an understanding. It might not even be out on the table, but we know that in that group, it's like, we just don't really worry about certain things. And that stagnancy can be not great if you let it go on in the long term, So I think getting around to different groups that exposes you to different athletes that have different styles, that have different problems, may have been taught in slightly different ways than you have approached things. I think that can really help to break you out of some of those ruts that you may find yourself in as a coach. So I think it's a great reason just on its face to try to get out and spread your coaching schedule around is to make yourself harder to hide. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Get out there. I think that's really powerful. And it doesn't have to be all the time. I'm not suggesting that you've got to be like, hey, random scattershot schedule.
Constantly
week to week.
Rotating schedule.
Yeah, maybe it's twice a month. You're like, hey, I have my set schedule, but once or twice a month I do an afternoon class and I kind of shift other things around to be able to do it because that's important to me. That might be one way to approach it that doesn't break the bank on time.
And a good hybrid approach can sort of be, maybe as we said, life is life. The coaches, the part-time coaches, they've got their schedule and it doesn't work. But every now and then, if you do have your, male or female coach that's just a beast with the powerlifting, with the Olympic lifting or gymnastics or running or whatever it is, and once a month or once every 2 weeks, that trainer is going to put on a 1-hour clinic for whatever that particular thing is. Well, then that is probably going to give that coach and those athletes exposure, because maybe that coaches a class that you don't normally attend, but they're the Olympic lifting guru. You attend the workshop, the coach gets to see a new athlete that they don't normally see, keeps them sharp, like you said. You as an athlete get to have exposure to a trainer that you don't normally do, new cues, new everything. So that's cool. And so because we've got 6, 5, 6, 7 coaches, however many at the gym, they've all probably got different things that they're good at. You can leverage that, even if their schedules are somewhat set, and still get exposure and cross-pollination in that way as well. So hopefully you get some options.
Yeah, and the last thing that I'll kind of add, this is kind of my last thought here. There's kind of a negative bent to some of this, but I'll start with the positive. And the positive angle is that...
Let's end on a negative, so start with the positive.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's always a great strategy, right? Just keep... So it's been a full disclosure. It's been a while since I've been coaching actively with any sort of regularity at an affiliate. But when I did, to me, it was always really important to have a good understanding of the majority of the member base. I never liked the feeling when I felt like I was part of this gym and like a big part of it, but I didn't know some of the people that came in at certain times. I hated having that blind spot of like, hey, anybody that comes in before noon, I know them on a face-to-face basis. I feel like they're just like part of the part of the group. But anybody that comes in afternoon, I'm like, hey, stranger, what's up? Like, I hated
Right.
that feeling on a personal level.
Hey,
And so
sign
to
a waiver
me,
before you walk in. They're like, I've been a member for 3 years. Like, oh, sorry,
exactly.
buddy.
Yeah, that's the worst feeling. I always hated that. And it did come up from time to time. And so for me on a personal level, it was always important to make sure that there was enough opportunity to try to coach at different times so that I could feel like I had a finger on the pulse of the entire community, not just a subset of it. And I'll also say, so that's the positive side, right? From the coaching perspective, it's like, hey, man, that's a great thing to give you a more holistic view of what's actually going on within the walls of the gym. And I think that's even more important the higher up in the food chain of that organization you are. So if you are the affiliate manager or the owner, I think it's paramount that you have that kind of 360 view. Maybe if you're just a part-time coach that is only coaching once a week, okay, maybe that's less important to you. But, you kind of have to decide that on a personal level. Regardless, on the opposite end of that, and this is, again, going with things that people feel on a visceral level when they come into these gyms sometimes. Sometimes you walk into a gym and you can feel the clickiness of it. You can just feel that it's like, oh, this is Kevin's 8 a.m. group. Who are you showing up, noon class guy? What are you doing here
Hit the
before
bricks.
that time of day? Yeah, exactly. Or wait a minute, Kevin's not here to coach this class. We are going to reject this other coach outright because, like, dude, Kevin's our guy. Like, you can feel that. And hey, if you're part of that in group, maybe you don't see a problem. But for everybody else, it is not a good situation. And
Nothing
so,
good comes of that.
correct. And it's something you, in my opinion, you absolutely have to be on guard for and cut out as often as you can. It's okay to have a preference. Hey, nothing wrong with having like the expected group that you see coming in regularly and like you're stoked to train with them. That's not what I'm talking about. That's great. But there can be that other end of it that has that hard edge that starts to create this in-group, out-group. And that is, it's so destructive in the walls of a gym. And
Toxic.
absolutely. And so that little bit of leapfrogging of coaching schedule, I think, can really do a lot to start eroding some of that or stave it off in the first place because people just have this expectation that there's going to be new people cycling in. You're going to have to get along with them. This is a place that we all are pulling in the same direction. That's just part of it from the get-go. And it's like much easier to kind of maintain that instead of trying to break it down later. So
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. And I think I've given my points. I think that was a good thing to close on. I think you were right. There was more to this topic than I realized. We should probably wrap on that one because I think we'd rip for a long time on the next one. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
right on. Well, let me put my closing thoughts. I feel like
Okay.
I got the motor mouth today, but yeah. So I guess after talking through all of that and running down my kind of rap sheet here, I think I've talked myself into the very pro cross-pollination schedule if you can swing it at all. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor, even if it can't be something that's like every week people are rotating in and out. Try to make the effort to get people exposed to different coaches at different times because I think there's way more potential for good things to come out of that than the alternative. So I'll leave it at that.
variance is a wonderful thing, not only with your movements and loadings and gross movement patterns and time domains, but also for the coaches to see different people and for the people to see different coaches. I think that would be something I could get behind as well as a general concept. Again, everybody, we appreciate this. This is your show. Everyone out there drives the content, so please keep it coming. Find this episode on the btwb YouTube channel. Leave your thoughts about this topic. Which way would you lean? Do you have an idea, thought, topic for a future show? Post it in the comments. If you want to be a bit more anonymous, you can send it as a direct message on Instagram. Just find Varied Not Random on Instagram and send a direct message that way. Or publicly on Instagram, you could just go to any of the posts, most recent posts for Varied Not Random, leave your comments and thoughts there, and they help drive future shows. So, for Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we will see you next time.